Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? Today we have a very special guest. Actually, to tell you the truth, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. This candidate right here is actually one of my greatest hopes for my coalition of the people that I work with. So, this is a special one right here. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, though. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, DJ Elf 7, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. It means a lot. My name is Gonzalo Duran. I am the vice chairman for the Bronx County Conservative Party. I also wear different hats, but most recently, I was the congressional candidate for District 15 in the Bronx. So
Okay.
I'm here today, and I look forward to today's interview.
Yeah. So this is I believe you're running for mayor. Who knows? Things could change, but this is we're gonna find out. The first half of the interview, we're gonna ask him questions about himself. So the first thing is, what got you started on this political journey? What's the first issue that you kind of worked on that got you in the political sphere that you became aware of?
Well, the biggest impacted thing that happened to me was coming back home and having to deal with a lot of the issues that many veterans are coming back to. Not every, but many veterans. One particular demographic was student veterans that are coming back homeless because, let's say in New York City, um, the rents are high. That's one thing, but particularly when we come back with the GI Bill, most of the renters, landlords, and brokers don't understand what the paper is, the paperwork that we bring back that gives us the ability to say, look, we have the ability to go to college, and while we're going to college, we get a stipend for housing, and that stipend is just it's a paper that says how many months you have how many for how much period for how much per the period. So that's something like just a paper saying you have this much money for this much time, and that's it. No W-4, no W-2s, and no paper trail, no tax. It's not being taxed or anything like that. So it's something that they're not accustomed to, and in that journey, I started speaking out on it on a national level from Fox News, ABC, CBS, Connecticut, New Jersey, all the way to California. And I started highlighting that in New York City, the end result was that they made I forget it was either a housing New York City um, Human Rights Act 2017, where now it's illegal for brokers and landlords not to accept the GI Bill based off for housing. So that was my first. Although none of the paperwork for the political realm um, has my name on it, but the framework is there, and publications and outspokenness of being the like one of the figureheads on that proposal is part of my work. And for me, it started Devil Dog USA Incorporated, a nonprofit that we've been operational for like 11 years now, and pretty much everything else from the foundation from there. Even our civic engagement is based off of that framework of me starting and that cause of student veteran homelessness back then.
That's very okay. That's great. So, are you familiar with like programs like City FEPs and other programs for like homeless?
Yes. So
Oh wow. Okay.
as a nonprofit leader, for and doing different work in the communities as a Department of Labor veteran advisor to the Veterans Hospital advisor as well. I've come across that many times over the years.
Well, I'm excited to learn about your understanding that particular realm on several issues. And once again, I know that's a little bit more work for the landlords to really learn about the GI Bill, but these people have actually decided to sacrifice and risk their lives in defense of the country. It's worth a little bit more effort. So I am sympathetic to both sides here. But once again, come on, these are veterans, right? We could need to do better by them. We're not asking them to jump through a flaming hoop right here. We're asking them to just read some paperwork. It's something that landlords we need to give back. So I agree with that. I'm
Well,
I'm touched to learn about this. I didn't know
I
about this.
one thing that I like that I've seen over the course of our interactions is that you see both sides, and there is a both sides to it. The reason why landlords and brokers are hesitant or have been hesitant is because no different than the FET reps programs and stuff like that. Is that if one person messes it up, for the rest of the people to come in on that. Like, so let's say the GI Bill, if a veteran student may have an issue, and then doesn't complete a semester in college, then he doesn't get that paycheck, and then next thing you know, they're out of luck with their rent. So it starts a whole cascade of issues. But once again, a veteran coming back home with the money in hand shouldn't be denied the opportunity, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah. Once again, veterans, especially if they're in combat situations, are being going through PTSD, and when they're in school, right, there might be a problem, and for them to withdraw and cause a lot more chaos in their lives. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some accountability, but really, we need. That's a great point. So, I actually do a lot of work with the homeless stuff like that, and I really did not know about this issue going on for the veterans. So I'm really I still have a lot to learn myself, and I'm really happy to meet you. We're going to talk more about that, but anyways, but we're really learning more about yourself as a candidate, right? The first half to interview someone about you as a candidate. So, the next question is, um, some people out there like say they have a certain ideology, like AOC says she's a socialist, right? And or you have people that follow. It doesn't have to be like this kind of like some people say they're conservative, some people say they're liberal, right? Or whatever ideology. It doesn't have to be like some people say they're environmentalist or whatever. It doesn't have to necessarily be in that framework, right? Maybe it's you're a veteran, right? Maybe that's your but if you have a certain I don't know if that's an ideology, right? But do you have any particular political ideology that you claim?
Yeah, so for the last 2 years, it's been very difficult with stuff like that, especially joining the Conservative Party. So when I joined, the I guess the parties when I was 18, my ideology, my mindset was, I had just joined the Marines. I was in California, and I was doing the paperwork for my driver's license. And at the same time, they say, "Well, join a party." And I remember back then, the person, I was sitting next to, and I was like, I don't know, I don't know what to do. And they were like, well, I think the outcome was, Democrats were for the poor and Republicans were for the rich. And I signed up that day, and I never did any political things until, coming back home a couple years later. Um, and I'll talk about that in a different time, where the next step of my political career started. But up until that point, I never saw any Republican or Democrat um, split or anything like that. To me, it was all just government and politics. Um, joining when I joined the Conservative Party, I was asked a few questions like, do you have a belief in higher power? Well, I'm a chaplain, so yes, I do believe in a higher power. And they were like, "Are you patriotic?" Well, I'm former United States Marine, so I'm pretty patriotic there, and et cetera, et cetera. And all these things came up, and I was like, well, I fit the caliber of the Conservative Party, and I would be happy to join. And when I did, I started building up more into what my philosophy is, because you're gonna have Republicans coming at you and say, "Well, you're a rhino." I'm like, "Well, what's a rhino?" And this and that. So I've come up with something, in my perspective, that I'm a democratic fiscal conservative. So if people want to be more narrow, I mean, I would say that I'm a moderate conservative. I believe in democracy and the democratic system, but I have more foundation when it comes to fiscal responsibility, which pushes me on the more far or more the towards the right, um, leaning towards the right on that. Like, I want people to, when it comes to the LGBT community, I want the LGBT community to have their rights and their perspectives. But once it starts taking away from the people's money, that's where I have a problem. I don't mind humanitarian and helping other countries, but once you start taking funding from the lower income or the ones that need it most in America and giving it to other people without transparency, that's where I have a problem, and etc.
I like that. That's a great answer. All right. Now the thing is that within all different ideologies and movement, there's going to be different factions that kind of spring up, right? So something that kind of maybe help us to understand better, and you did a great job of explaining the fiscal conservative, right? Your view on that. Is there anybody who's influential, and it doesn't have to be on conservatism; it could be just on life in general, right? But is there someone who's influential to your way of thinking, or politically or otherwise, but preferably politically, right?
Unfortunately, I haven't had that many deep delve into that too much with individuals. Like my mentor, Patrick Manis, the chairman of the Conservative Party, is someone that I truly respect and I've seen as a mentor. One of the things, one of the biggest things he said to me the other, uh, and since I met him, was regarding with the LGBT community. I was like, look, Pat, I help the LGBT community. I've done work with them. I sponsor them. I've done things like that. Um, but there's a certain limit to where I think there should be openness to it. And he said, "Look, Gonzalo, look, you can you can respect them, but you don't have to accept everything." And I was like, "Wow, that blew my mind right there." So when it comes to the work that I've done, he's someone that I've seen as a mentor. But in my overall, when it comes to politics and things and individuals, I've always looked towards George Washington, John Adams, and Abraham Lincoln.
That's cool. All right, I appreciate that. And what about you did explain for like Manus, but what about the last people that you mentioned? What specifically about them did you find? You know, what made you decide to be inspired by them?
Well,
Their
one thing
qualities.
I mean, just to highlight when it comes to George Washington, being able to start as a leader in government, the first president of the United States, someone who was pretty much almost unchallenged when he ran for president, not because of his stance, but because of the respect that he garnered in that time period, and then being able to step down when he knew that the uh, aristocracy, the what could be reviewed as a president. Like if you start seeing yourself as the emperor, then what's gonna follow in. So he knew that at that time period that if he didn't step down, that people would start taking advantage of the seat of the House of the presidency. And he said, you know what, let me step down now, which a lot of people I don't think would do at this time period. And then when it comes to John Adams, being in second place and being the second guy taking over of a country, and having to follow the first is not something easy. I remember reading his autobiography a couple years ago, and it just intrigued me everything that I read. And then when it comes to Abraham Lincoln, I mean, honest Abe, all the stories, the monuments, everything that we look, his work in short term work, and then him being able to stand out above among other presidents is something that I've always endured. The one thing that I didn't do when I was in DC was go visit the monument, which I hope to do this upcoming year.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Now, the next question is: there's different candidates who come to this, who try to run for positions like mayor, things like that, with different levels of ability and or different levels of understanding. Right. Some people are never been in politics before. Some people have been running have been in elected positions all their lives, right? Or for decades and stuff. You already actually, I really liked your answer. You said already started uh, a not-for-profit group to try to help veterans. You're also a leading member and in the Bronx Conservative Party. What? Hopefully, I want your answer to be something more political, right? So sometimes I say, "What are you most proud of achieving?" And people will say, "My kids." But and I'm not mad at that, but I'm saying, like, once again, right, as in terms of like talking to the audience, talking about like leadership, talking about like running a government, or maybe just what are you most proud of accomplishing? And it could be a couple things. You don't have to access just one, but just two, three max, or around there. You get what I mean?
I
or,
got
or
you.
just one if you need. Okay.
So one of the things I am truly proud of, what I mentioned earlier, was the Human Rights Act of 2017 for the veterans. Once again, I didn't have my hand in the framework because internal politics is harder than general politics. And when I mean internal politics, when, like, let's say I think the commissioner Sutton, Dr. Sutton, was the person that put it. Now, although she's going to get all the credit for putting the bill and pushing it up to the city and everything like that, I was standing next to her while at the veterans, let's say, um, housing commission breakfast. So although she's the main person holding it, here I am speaking on the subject matter that she eventually worked on. with along with other organizations and stuff like that. Me putting out the blueprint out there so that one day hopefully somebody could grab it and see it. Once again, these are things I published 7, 10 years ago, so that people can look at it and something come about of it. The end result of it happening was one of the proudest moments of my life, because and not only in my life but politically, and told me, look, this is something you could do. Why? Because you saw a problem, you designed an answer for it, and then you went about pushing that agenda. Now, it's you may not be the person that gets the credit for it, but at the end of the day, as long as the mission is accomplished, you know, why not be proud of that? Why not be happy to that? Another thing I'm very proud of, in the South Bronx as a conservative member, it's not easy, but being able to recruit just over 250 individuals to the Conservative Party that were either um, not registered to any political party, Democrats or Republicans, and independents to come over has been a big accomplishment. It's not easy, especially with very little resources. Just a table, a banner, and registration cards, and being able to talk to the people directly. I think accomplishment in itself. The Bronx Conservative Party has gained 15% last year and over 15% this year based off that work. Not by myself, but with the party itself, and I've been a big part of that. And the second thing is being I would say being the vice chairman for the Conservative Party, and I'm gonna explain in details on this one because it's really important. Coming as a Democrat and being a moderate conservative, it's not easy in a conservative organization. When I came in, there was a lot of people that really didn't have a lot of confidence in me, people that really didn't like my policies and ideologies or my methods on the way that I've done things. But gradually, I've been able to win over those individuals, so much so that, within 3 months of joining the party, I became the district leader for the 79th district. And then from there, I became 3 months after that, became the vice chairman because of the work and the input that I put in the short time period. And for me, being able to hold the titles that I've been able in this last 2 years has given me the ability to speak on. If I would have said 2 years ago I'm running for mayor, people would have just laughed. Nobody's laughing. People are like, I don't know, maybe this, maybe they might have a problem with this and that, or wish I was a different party, or they love my story or this, but no one's saying, oh, well, that's a joke. That's the difference. Because now, if you look up what I've been able to do in 2 years as a party member, our media, my foundation for my backgrounds, my platforms, and the work that I've done all say, oh, wow, I thought he was in some political position already, or in some higher position than I am, because county level positions are non-paid positions and volunteer positions, which a lot of people don't understand. So I don't make buku money for being vice chairman or a district leader, but it's the work that I believe in, and that's why I'm so proud of what I've been able to accomplish.
Hey, that's cool. All right. By the way, I know you're talking about there's a lot of complexities already. My mind is scooting all over the place. So that's actually it's very inspirational. To tell you the truth, I actually may be taking similar steps out here in Queens to try to register voters into the Conservative Party. I'm actually That's a whole nother story though. So I'm actually myself. If you're a fan of me, I'm actually maybe following in Gonzalo's footsteps, hopefully, or that's some. It's a place that I'm looking to as very possible. So very cool, man. That's how much. Once again, one of the greatest potential hopes for my coalition. So we're going to see where that goes. All right, so that's really the questions about yourself as a candidate. Now we're going to move on to your some of your policies. So the thing is that I have my own questions, but I'm going to start off with my coalition because I like to put my partners first. Now the thing is that in my coalition, one of the groups that I work with is the wrongfully convicted. And I don't know if you've ever seen in my work, but like we're taking on Melinda Katz. We see weaponization of the legal system. I mean, some people will agree with this or not, but I would say most Americans agree that the justice system of New York City was weaponized against Donald Trump, things like that. I know there are people who really disagree with that, but just so you know, I would say that most Americans did make that decision, right? So,
Well, I said it publicly in video and in an article format in a press release. So I'm
right.
right with you.
So we can see, right, this, you could say that there's the legal system is weaponized against political opponents, and sometimes that includes communities that are, um, vulnerable, right? So, what's your what are your plans to address? We know New York City has a lot of like NYPD. They have like some type of local stuff, like local DAs. What's your plans to, as mayor, to try to help address the issues of wrongful incarceration?
Well, I haven't put too much effort into wrongful incarceration, but obviously, that's not something that I want to happen. I've always been, I believe in the system. I believe in the justice system. Does it need to be revamped? Yes, of course. One example is, you know, for a lot of people don't understand when the reason I push so hard for registration is so that people can get an open eye on maybe running for office. One of the biggest problems that we have is the judicial part of our registration. When you go to the ballot, you only see Democrats down the line. You don't see any competition against them. So you're only getting one set of mind that's in majority of the branches for New York City. And let's say the DA for the Bronx was not challenged at all. There was no competition. How can we fight a justice system or implement new blood into it, let's say, if we have nobody competing with them? And it's not, the requirements are not that hard. We're talking about 10 years of, I believe it's 10 years of bar. You have to be in the bar and a practice. You don't have to be a practicing lawyer. But even then, it's been super hard to find anybody that's willing to challenge the opposition. You know, as a nonprofit leader, I'll move on to a different subject. This is a different part of it. As a nonprofit leader, when it comes to the injustice system, for the veteran court system, that's where I've been more proactive in. So I would like to see the Veterans Court more engaged and expanded. If people don't know, for those that have been, let's say, convicted of minor crimes, can go to a separate court for the Veterans Court that are more appealing and knowledgeable about veteran um, issues, can get seen through a different court system. But one of the problems that's lagging is the volunteers working in them, and then the resources that are coming out once somebody gets, I guess, charged or released. When it comes to the bigger crimes, let's say my biggest part has been trying to get people to register once they are released from prison that are felons. A lot of people don't. A lot of individuals who are felons who get out and may not get properly discharged, may not know that they have to re-register, and are able to register once they leave the prison, that are felons. Um,
Register with what?
Back into the parties or whatever they want to vote, for they can vote.
Okay. Oh, register to vote. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a large number that I pass by, and a lot of them don't know that once they leave, they're able to vote, or re-register to they can vote. When it comes to the specific topic you talked about, there's a lot of nonprofits that we can back, like and I can't remember the Bronx Injustice Organization. I don't remember them all by heart, but I work with organizations like NILAG and other law groups. Now, the one problem that I have is city funding those programs. I would prefer that the community fund those programs more so than let's say the city, because then it looks like it's double dipping or fighting each other in certain ways. Like let's say for the housing court, we have a lot of organizations that are getting
To
not
compete
enough.
with each other instead of actually spending the resources on the people that need help. They're busy competing, and
Yes, that's
yeah,
and
I
it's
get
not,
it.
as a nonprofit leader, it's hard to say stuff like that, but so that people can understand, Devil Dog USA Incorporated has funded 11 years without any federal, state, or city funding. all through charitable organization and sponsorship. So is it possible? Yes. Is it likely to happen at the larger scale? Not so much, but it is doable if you do it the right way. And that's one of those things that I believe in a position of power or leadership that I can make some changes on.
I'm personally really impressed by your answers. I unfortunately know that a lot of people who watch this may not understand what's going on because you're really talking about the depth of machine politics and really understanding how to really, at a political level, you got to have a certain level of political maturity to understand the answers that I feel like you're giving, um, which is good and bad, right? But as someone, if you look at my body of work, I'm really understand the level of depth to your answers as in terms of, like, once again, when we talk about wrongful incarcerations, you're absolutely right. The way that the judges are controlled, the DAs are controlled, they're all part of one party system. This encourages them to act in certain ways and to cover up, right? And this goes to just the why certain things happen, right? And why certain things don't happen. And that's huge. But being the conservative, I'm just going to veer off just for a second. Now that one of the issues that we work on is wrongful people who've been wrongfully incarcerated who come out. What's your plan for their compensation?
Well, I mean, obviously, I've worked with organizations like the Osborne Corporation and other organizations like them. It's hard to find individuals to go in general to find employment, but trying to set aside, let's say, possible employment for incarcerated and former incarcerated individuals, it would be one of my goals.
Well, there's also the idea of them being wrongfully incarcerated,
Yeah.
right? So that time that they spend inside, just so you know, a lot of people they hear the word Republican. You did a great job of entering that idea earlier. There's a simplification where they say Republican rich people, Democrat poor people, and that's why the Democrats do so well, I think, right? Because people mean well, but we see the realities. So the thing is that what happens that Texas is known for the death penalty and killing a lot of people, right? Yeah. Now, the thing is that people, even if you don't agree with that, but Texas is also number one in exonerations of people who've been wrongfully incarcerated. So the thing is that the Republicans, they will kill you, right? But if they messed up, they will admit they're wrong. And that's one of the dangers, once again, about the whole justice being one party, right, system where they're covering for each other. They don't want to ever admit they're wrong or anything. And it leads to some real problems. Another thing that Texas is number one is in wrongful incarceration compensation. If you're wrongfully incarcerated, I believe they want at least $50,000 per year minimum for a year of wrongful incarceration. I think that's a fair guideline. I think a lot of cases it deserves more, especially people wrongfully incarcerated for rape, where they had their stay was horrible, things like that. There's a lot of problems with the prison system that needs to be addressed too. But I think that's a fair guideline. $50,000 I think is kind of low, right? You have working a entry level job. You have so many problems off of being wrongfully incarcerated, but once again, Texas has the best. Would you support a wrongful incarceration at
Yes.
$50,000?
So if we're talking about like giving them compensation, that's and I'm gonna be very cautious when I say this because one of the things I don't like is that everybody wants to sue everybody immediately after something, and people don't understand. Like, let's say if you're trying to, if somebody did something, I don't want to say nothing's too minuscule, but let's say something happened in a school, and because the school is easy to project, and you can see this, if something happened bad at a school, if you sue, then the school may not be able to be operational the following year depending on how much you go. If you do some crazy 50, $60 million for a school with a budget like maybe 20, $30 million, you can see how something like that happens. When it comes to something, the scenario you gave was a wrongfully convicted individual, incarcerated individual coming out, should they be compensated afterwards? Yes. Should there be programs that be prepped and set for them for employment? Yes. Should be working with nonprofits and other organizations and community resources and city resources to try to provide services for them. Yes, I agree with. I
appreciate that. That's great. That's a great answer.
I would go for that. I would work towards that. But at the same time, my goal would always try to be to get the community involvement first, and the biggest impact because reintegrating back into the community, you need the community's help. On that one.
Now, out of all the coalition that I work with, we're going to ask a question about the rest of my coalition. The wrongfully incarcerated are doing quite a bit of work politically. They're actually some of my strongest allies in my coalition. So hopefully during the time when you need petitioning and stuff like that, they will go out, and they're actually planning on running for county committee as well. So, and that could also help you, right? They could also let people know about your campaign. So
Well,
that's
I want
one.
to throw
Yeah,
something out there. If for someone, let's say an individual that's been wrongly convicted, right, and they've gone out and they've, re-entered society and have been acclimated already, I would say one of them should be running for office. They should be running for county committee or a district leader or even a
that's what we're
party
doing.
level. Yeah,
We're doing right now. And not only that, I will actually probably after this, I know like we can't spend all the time on this one question, but I will be actually putting in contact with other people that I work with in that particular field so that maybe we could have a conversation, maybe a discussion panel, or, I know that everybody has their specialty of the different things that they're working on, but it's good to know that you're receptive to our community, right? And someone who's willing to work with us. And that's very, very promising. A lot of candidates just don't want to have a conversation. The
well,
access is cut off. They say they're for you. They're not. I'm
look,
sorry. Go
I'll go further than that, and this is what I try to be sympathetic, because if I had talked in a way that I'm either far super left or far super right, I'm only going to get those type of individuals that are going to be rallying. I would probably be more um, known in the community and media if I was like either far left or far right. But I'm straight in the middle for the most part, and once again, I do lean to the right because of fiscal responsibilities, but coming to see someone and being able to talk to you about this. Look, I'll go as far as, and this is me in almost any situation. Look, if you want to hold an event in the Bronx dedicated to that topic, I'm more than happy to. I'm happy to get the panel ready. I'm happy to get the media so that we can start making this discussion bigger. Because if there's a situation where a coalition is building up, I'm assuming that the one of the biggest problems is that nobody wants to put their hands first and say, let's talk about this publicly. And I'm willing to be that guy that says, let's talk about this publicly, because we have to bring everybody in the table so we can have good hearted conversations and make change.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's go to the next one over here. One of the second largest minority voting bloc in the nation, probably the state, may become the largest voting bloc, honestly, depending on how Black people who are number one right now are actually often not voting and stuff like that, is the disabled community. Now, the thing is that a lot of times people, we need authentic representation into policy, people with disabilities. And for example, right, I believe the Helen Keller Institute, I think that um, their director, executive director, not necessarily in a DI case, we're going to ask, that's another question, but um, people with disabilities themselves have never actually been actually leading that organization. Um, and one of the groups that I work with, specifically Marc Safman, shout out to him, is on the issues of the deaf blind, because a lot of times people who are used or who are pushed up in the disabilities advocacy world of people in the wheelchairs who don't have the same communication issues as the deaf blind, right? They don't have to have like cart to actually like see things that are bigger. They don't have to have sign language interpreters, things like that. They can just communicate with them normally, which makes certain issues become buried and certain issues become lifted in the disabilities world. So what will you do to assure that authentic representation of disabled people is gives them access to policy, ability to influence policy?
Well, just like I just finished speaking with you and offering you that ability to not only speak, but also organize and try to push out the your agenda, I would do the same thing for the disability community as well, disabled community as well. And I've done that over the years. Although my issues are not more physically visible, I have my own issues. If you look at my body, I have skin conditions and psoriatic arthritis. So that's not something that's too complicated or indestructible. But imagine if my face was all covered up in scars and stuff like that, and which has happened over the years and may not be more visibly and have me want to be more vocal. Because I am, well, a lot of people don't believe this, but I'm a very shy and introverted person. But to do the work that I'm doing, I have to be vocal, I have to be visible. So, even though I have all these things going on in my ears and my face and and stuff in my neck, I still try to be more proactive. And that's what I want to do, not only for those that are disabled, like just like I said with you, if somebody came up to me from an organization, I would try to give them the opportunity to be outspoken and rally behind them. Whether I believe in their everything that they are vocal about, but that doesn't stop their right for freedoms to be able to speak out loud. The secondary part to that is to try to get them to try to be more active in civic engagement, because at every point, at a certain point, you have to be politically savvy at a certain point. When it comes to being more formal, I would say something where if they wanted to start an organization, then that's one of my fortes in my nonprofit world, and in helping people to start businesses and corporate and becoming incorporated, which is an important thing because you can't start a movement without the funding behind it. But before you can get the funding, you have to become somewhat incorporated.
All right. So we may actually set up a discussion panel later with candidates and also other people in the disabilities community, right? To once again, bring up different, there's different factions in all different communities, but to bring up different issues as well. You do bring up a good point that, it's really a two-way street, right? The people with disabilities have to also step up as well into these positions and try to get into them, and then they can help them. You can't force them in. So that's an interesting take, yeah, and that's definitely true. I would also guess that as a veteran, a lot of people come out with possibly injuries, stuff like that, that have to be dealt with. So I know you've probably worked with disability stuff. The next group that I work with, actually, I'm also a personal victim of the abuse of academic administrators in the CUNY system. We know that the mayor actually would be, the city, right, takes care of different things, right? The federal government takes care of the mail, they take care of the military, and then you take a look at the city, right? They're going to be taking care of the schools, they take care of like police force, and CUNY, right? They're actually the mayor. Remember, there's SUNY, which is State University of New York, CUNY, City of New York. CUNY is actually the largest urban university system in the nation. And what would you do to help? The thing is that I don't know if you knew someone named Jeff Parsons at Hunter College was actually taking federal money that was given to him for research and was spending on cocaine parties and using on trips to go to to go to like scuba diving and stuff like that, and then he had to return the money. Jennifer Robb, just that there's a whole culture of corruption and academic abuse at CUNY, just like at MTA, how they were cooking the books, and this leads to them abusing students that try to investigate these procedures or bump into them in different ways, because in order to assure corruption without problems, they have to have a very top-down structure where you cannot actually challenge certain things. And it's so, what could you do to help students who are facing the abuse of academic administrators?
That's something that I haven't delved too much into in my, not only in my political but in my personal career. I mean, I've been somebody who's been proactive in fighting the system, so I know how they feel on being reprimanded from different areas. Obviously, everybody, I know, but I do a talk show with in Vet Talk. A couple of years ago, we were broadcasting from BronxNet. Now we're broadcasting from Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and we're featured in most of the boroughs. The reason why we had to leave BronxNet because our cameras got stolen from in the Bronx, and then I got reprimanded for that. Now I know that's a different scenario, but my point is that look, when stuff like that happens, we have to take action and find different ways to venues. When individuals that are trying to fight the system and getting reprimanded, obviously I want to help them in any way that I can. One way that I've done that is by journalism, whether I've done it in television or whether I've done it through articles in the newspaper. And as a press passing holder, I've been trying to fight the corruption where I can, but it's hard because not a lot of people want to make it public. Even coming into the political realm, once you start speaking against the system, then you're getting hit left and right. Your career becomes in jeopardy. Your housing becomes in jeopardy. Your financial stability. And then you got to think about your family. What's going to happen to them? I've received death threats, and for the first time. This is the first time that's happened, but I've actually got a subreddit group that's negative towards me, which I've never I've never seen. I didn't think I would become that popular enough for something like that to happen. But those are things that we have to fight, and it's unfortunate that the people that have to go through that have to suffer. The way I would say is, we have to unite, we have to gather together, we have to share resources so that we can combat those things on a policy level. Obviously, those that are whistleblowers or people that are being attacked should be safeguarded at a certain point. Every case is different. I can't speak on a general terms of it at the moment because I am not, the most qualified person for that. But you know, there are
If I could
there.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, if I could just insert something here. So, actually, talking about whistleblowing, I did actually have a video up where I reveal the public books of CUNY were available, and I showed how university administrators were going on trips to private to resorts with the student activity money and getting their cell phone bills paid for, and that was. So talking about that, we actually are asking, and I do appreciate that you are willing to admit, right? Some people just are willing to yell a soundbite with conviction. And unfortunately, those are the successful politicians, right? But you're able to, right? If you don't know about it, you say that, right? But what we're trying to do is we already have 3 U.S. presidential candidates who are running in the 2024 election cycle who agreed that they would support Kori Edens and myself getting a meeting with the CUNY chancellor and the Hunter University president to talk about these issues in a public forum, in a publicly recorded way, right? We don't want to have any private meetings where they say something and there's no record of it. Like, why are we even having that meeting? It should be a public. Would you support us as in terms of getting myself and Kori Edens, just a meeting that's, that we could record, a meeting with the chancellor and the Hunter College president?
Yes, I would.
Really appreciate that. We're going to get a whole bunch of, candidates running the cycle for New York, and we're going to have them back us up too, and we're going to let them keep ignoring us. Yeah, you can't run forever. All right.
And to the last part of that question, for those that are breaking the laws, I believe in hard justice. So they should get the full the book thrown at them, especially when they're using. Once again, this is where my more right leaning towards is fiscal conservative and responsibility. So something like that I would be hard pressed on them for.
I really appreciate that. I want some. They made us suffer. Thank God. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next one over here. I want to shout out my guy, Christopher Leon Johnson, the most prolific, I believe, reporter in New York City history. He comes out with so much material. I love the guy. Now, right, I've mentioned other my favorite partners, and I said he had a question. He could ask all the questions, and he said, e-bike regulations, we know from starting fires and, housing projects from to, you see 20, 30 different, bikes in front of, eating establishment, right? Because they're all delivery guys, right? And they're parking on the sidewalk and messing up the traffic sometimes. What are your ideas for e-bike regulations in New York City?
Well, first, and regulate. I don't want the government to be too far reaching into our lives. So I'm always going to say. So there's one thing. When it comes to the battery part, we have to have more harder regulations on that. I don't know if a lot of people know, and I've only done somewhat studies on this, research on it. But the biggest problem with the fires with the batteries is that they're low quality made, so that's why they're having these issues. If people just brought the more popular or more, and I hate saying this word like this, but more expensive ones, it would be less inclined for happening. We're finding that a lot of the reasons why these are being particularly done is because they're low quality ones that don't have the good system. One other thing is, when they implemented these programs, let's say the e-bikes and the scooters and all that stuff, nobody really thought about the repercussions of it. Like we make these laws or we start these programs without doing the backward and the after effects of what is the repercussions are going to be. Like at some point somebody had to know that people are in the boroughs are not going to put all the bikes and all the scooters together. So what happened in the time that it has happened? Now we have let's say community groups coming together to put the bikes back together, and we have offspring of organizations and ways to make money to get those bikes into. There are people making. There was a news report recently that there's individuals making like over $1,000 a month, putting those bikes back into it as a side hustle. So I mean, the smoke shops is an example, and I'm not trying to veer off, but that's something that I'm trying to get at. We approve the basically marijuana being able to use, and then we find it hard to understand why we have so many people smoking weed and doing all these things in the community. Well, obviously, if you made it legal, then it was going to happen. The bike situation, I believe we could have done more better regulations in the organizations that we gave the funding to, instead of the elected officials being paid off and using them particularly without having them uh, having a fully thought out plan on regulating these things. I believe in having a green system. I believe, I'm not going to say I'm an environmentalist, but I believe in the green. I work with the community to make safer streets and stuff like that. But that's one of those things that's irked me since the inception.
Interesting. All right, I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Now another question that I have is, we're almost done with my partner's questions. I'm sorry, I have so many partners, but the Asian American community inside of Bensonhurst is actually having, I think they've done like 100 days of consecutive strikes for, trying to fight against the building of a shelter in their community. We know that a lot of times the Asian American community, I think in New York City's Chinatown, they built out 8 separate homeless shelters. I'm not saying that homeless people don't need help, but certain communities are targeted to, right? And these are not the wealthy communities. A lot of these politicians who are out there championing for the building of homeless shelters in, saying that they sound, all compassionate, they won't actually have a shelter in their own personal community, right? So there's a hypocrisy that is not really being talked about. It's also the largest potential, mobilization of Asian Americans in New York City history, which is also not being covered by the press. What's your wait? So what's your ideas of making sure that communities aren't targeted for the building of shelters, and making sure they have community input? Because if you ask the communities, almost all of them will say, no, I don't want a shelter here. But how do you make sure that it's more fairly appropriated?
Well, being fairly appropriate, that part is easy. That means every district should have be vote on having a shelter or not.
I'm sorry, just one more thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, the thing is that the shelters, a lot with this particular shelter, there's a problem that it's being built next to a school and next to a supermarket right there, where there's a lot of traffic of kids and stuff like that. That honestly, being in the shelter, I haven't been in the shelter system. I've been homeless before, and I have all the sympathies for it. But that community does have problems, and I do agree that putting a shelter next to a school is not a good idea.
Yes, I'm 100% with that. And the rules, I believe there are city mandates that regulate that shelters and, let's say, drug rehabilitation centers and et cetera should be distanced at a certain amount away from schools. That's automatic. And a lot of times we see that not being followed. And that's why we should be fighting those issues particularly. I know for a fact, after speaking with the mayor a couple of months ago, was that a very small percentage of the shelters are built on certain districts in certain districts. Out of the many, only a very few of them. We should have to expand. We should expand on that to the other districts that don't have and and um, and equal opportunity. But the biggest thing is where to place them. That's a hard thing. Do we want to put individuals in a place where they have no sections for resources and stuff like that? Finding the right spot, um, but making sure that the public is aware of them is really important to me. And then in the end of the day, if we have one section that has 5 to 6, obviously pick somewhere else. Let's go somewhere else. We have to start making those hard decisions on where we place them and how we do them. Now, when I looked at myself at that, I know I'm going to be, if I was chosen um, and voted in as mayor, I would have to make a lot of hard decisions, and I would be looked at as a bad guy. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to take the brunt and the hard work and and be seen as the bad guy if that's what it takes to make New York City a stronger, safer place.
I'm so sympathetic to that. I tell you the truth, I'm always, a lot of times when I'm working on issues, I have to be the bad guy because other people don't want to do it, and I got a little bit used to it. It's what it is. The one forcing it in. Yeah, I really appreciate that. A lot of people, politicians especially, never want to do that role. Like some people call Brad Lander Brad Pander because just always pandering is it feels nice, but is it a good for you, right? It's like junk food, right? So I don't want to call it Brad Lander's junk food. Like he's smooth with it, right? But once again, if you're everybody's friend, are you really doing your job?
Yeah, yeah,
No. No. So appreciate that. That's real. All right. Getting towards also, what's your positions on DEI? Asian Americans are often excluded because DEI actually hurts us often. Just being real with you, right? Because we're not in the calculation. Oh, just so not a lot of people say that Asian Americans are overrepresented in schools and stuff like that. And a lot of those students are from Asia. A lot of them are foreign exchange students who are paying like 4 times, 5 times. And because the campus looks diverse, they have Asians there, not American people who are not Americans who are Asian, right? Yeah. But people look at your, I don't, oh, you were talking about some of your stuff working with schools, right? How many of those graduate students are from other countries that are there, right? And then it looks like diverse. Come on, it's BS. Yeah. So I'm so sorry, Tinsburg.
no, no.
Anyways, yeah. What's your plan?
You make a great point, and when it comes to politics, I can just say I respect everybody's diversity, and I don't think picking and choosing based off of race or inequality is the best form of trying to get things approached. But in my perspective, my door has always been open to everyone. I've never seen anyone coming in directly just because they're black or white or Jewish or Asian, etc. Everybody that's come through my door, whether it's political or non-political, in the nonprofit world or personal, I've always geared my work towards what they had a problem with and trying to solve it. If the diversity is an issue in certain, let's say, school systems, the number one way to that I would try to fix that is make sure that the people that are being inside is represented by bringing in the community, bringing in the parents, bringing in openness with everybody. Like, let's say, I think the biggest, the one I can remember was Denowitz. There was an issue where the school, the population wasn't being accounted for the diversity of it. And obviously, he's a Jewish elected official in a Jewish section of the Bronx and Riverdale. So obviously, they were, it seemed like they were trying to push other minorities out of the other ethnicities out of the school. So, that shouldn't be an issue. That shouldn't be a
Yeah.
I would never go in that type of route.
All groups have factions, and yeah,
Yeah,
DEI. Some groups are weaponized against others, and actually, sometimes it's used to hurt certain communities. So, like the disabilities guy said earlier, we need authentic representation, right, into policy versus some person cherry picking or slapping different people in to meet certain quotas. And this next question will actually address that. It's a hypothetical question. And I appreciate your position on the DEI. I like that answer. Yeah, a lot of people like simple answers that just don't really understand the complexity of what's going on. But I really think that was a great answer. But another group that I work with is the trans community. And the thing is that, right, we take a look at the trans people and we know that they face a lot of discrimination, like in their jobs, like, and I get it, right? I'm not saying that, they're right for everything, right? Like but they'll face job discrimination, they'll face housing discrimination. So this is a hypothetical question, right? And we're going to clear up why that's hypothetical, but we know that a lot of times people who are trans will end up needing services like public housing because of the different discrimination they face, which ends to poverty. So let's suppose that 10% of the people who are applying for public housing are trans. Then we actually do a study and we find that only 1% of the people in public housing are trans. So we start asking them, hey, what's going on? Why do you think that these numbers are off? And they say, oh, we're being discriminated against. We're getting beat up, right? People are treating us poorly. Now, the thing is that so we're moving out because we just don't like how we're treated here, right? So the thing is that whether you agree with their lifestyle or not, right, or whether their choices are, right, yeah, what will you do to assure this community fair access to government services?
Well, for government service, I don't think their personal gender identity should have any factor into it. That's number one. Um, Providing the resources shouldn't be hard either if they're applying and going for them. How can we help their discrimination is by making something like that I've been doing, let's say in the nonprofit world with mental health problems, trying to end the stigma. Now that's a different concept, but the same principles can be applied there as well. Um, Having an open dialogue with community members in the transgender community, with the other housing community members and resources, all putting it together in one spot would benefit. I'm not saying it has to be done every week or every month, but on a periodical basis could be done to try to alleviate some of that stress.
I've asked this question to over 100 candidates. You can see all the answers, and honestly, this is my out of all the I've heard so many responses, but this response aligns with the best answers that I feel also, as in terms of just realizing that it's not really right, because it's not, there's no law saying that you can discriminate against trans people. In fact, there's laws that say you can't, right? But it happens anyways. You can't legislate these things. You need to change the culture. You need to actually have an open conversation. But here's another interesting thing. I don't want to give it all away, right? Once again, I am biased here because you are a great hope for me and my community to actually get these issues addressed. But remember I said this idea of 10% and 1%, right? So this has because we look at Medicaid, and with Medicaid, people will on the form say that they're white, black, or whatever, right? And then that's used to the government will actually run studies on this to try to determine if there's bias as in terms of how healthcare is distributed. But remember that I said as in terms of this housing stuff, right? 1%, 10%, right? There's this idea of potentially using quotas. There's this idea of, right, is the data valid, right? There's also an additional thing, because with race and stuff, some people who look white say they're black, right? Like, but with the trans thing, it's even more, right? It's even more pronounced with people being able to say, I'm trans one day, I'm not trans, I'm in the closet, I'm not, all this other thing going on. People are selecting. I'm sorry, I threw so many things at you at once, right? But what's your idea with quotas and, as in terms of data collection, as in terms of determining, like, 1% versus 10%? How would you actually, right, when I gave them the hypothetical, some people even challenged the data itself. What's your idea to maybe make some clarity of that whole situation? And what's your idea on quotas or collecting data to see if there's discrimination or not?
So I've had to deal with my own problems with trying to get factual numbers, because even the VA system, let's say the 22 veterans a day suicide, is not an accurate number, but it's a combination, and let's say somewhat of a educated guess as well, because at a certain point there's a lot of factors. I'm just going to give one example, and then I'm going to go into more into your answer. Let's say a veteran passes away, but the funeral home or the medical examiner doesn't tally it up or send it up to the right to the proper channels, then they don't get allocated, even though it might have been a suicide or may not have been a suicide. When it comes to that situation, I think trying to get people to be more active and, let's say, the census and getting information. Let's say the city department has its own way of getting data. How can we improve it? I've never been inside the departments to look it over, but I have no doubt that it could be helped and revamped. When we have to provide services to our community, we have to have at least as close as accurate as we can get. Like, we have an what's it called? The city just came out with a program to try to get more city services provided to the people through an app and their, what's it called? The AI, or no, not the AI, the technology department. I can't remember the name of it, the acronym of it, but the biggest problem that we have is the people not willing to throw in their information. And whether it's because they're against the government or something like that, it once again, it's a two-way street. We have to have accountability on ourselves and have some kind of faith in our government as well. So if we're not willing to give up the data, or we're not willing to open up so we can get data can be collected, then it's going to be an issue at at all times.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I tell you the truth is, when I apply for schools, I'm not putting Asian. I put other. You know what I mean? I don't want to put Asian on my application. So that's a great point. I really appreciate that. This is a more complex issue, and we're gonna. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to throw one thing. For the transgender community, there is a hotline that just came up as a national hotline for transgender. I looked it up a minute ago. I don't, if I remember this correct. The phone number is 1-877-565-8860. And that's something that's brand new that's come out for the transgender community, a hotline for specifically dedicated to them.
Yeah, and I think that it's great that you have another resource. I really liked your first answer though, as in terms of like it's really up to the community. It's up to the community to start having conversations, create that cultural shift for acceptance, and really some of these things really can't be legislated because people, right, once again, will change their identity based off of right for convenience. I'm not saying that trans, right? I think it's a very I'm not trans myself, but so I can't really speak on it, but I think it's a very tragic thing that the discrimination they go through. So I'm sympathetic to their cause, and anybody who's throwing the trash, those are my people. So I got your back. You know what I mean? That's just what it is. So let's go on to the final question for the well, this is not in my partners, but oh my goodness, don't get yourself in trouble on this answer because we know what happened to Eric Adams. What about the migrants in New York City? Oh my goodness, as mayor, what's your policy on that?
Well, I'm a first generation, so my mother also came here illegally. So it'll be I know it sounds hypocritical that I'm pretty hard on the immigration crisis that we're going through. And my philosophy is, like, if this water bottle, if I started filling it to the top and then I kept on going, it's just gonna have a spillover. It's not gonna be a good situation. I'm trying to mitigate and help out the community as much as I can. For the last 11 years, I've dedicated a lot of my resources to helping those less fortunate, those in shelters, those that are coming to this country with clothing, Christmas events, and whatnot. So when it comes to my heart, it's always been there. When it comes to providing resources to those that are undocumented, illegal aliens, etc., I've held symposiums for them to understand that they have rights. Since New York City is a sanctuary city, they have rights. You can get a bank account, you can pay your taxes, you may not be able to get a job, but you can start your own business. And
this may change radically soon. Aren't they getting rid of? Isn't Trump getting rid of sanctuary cities?
Well, once again, what he says and what he does are two different things. Can he be
right?
Really,
he's got to get through. Right?
He has to get through. And with the laws with New York City passing Prop 1, I know it's going to be challenging the courts through the conservative and the party and other organizations. How much of it gets through? When does it start? That part I really haven't looked into. Things might change as well, but in the end of the day, we have to have a certain level of balance, and that's all I'm really trying to get done.
So Prop 1 is kind of like supposedly anti-discrimination, but we know that I also do not support Prop 1, right? Just so people who don't know what Prop 1 is. Wait, actually, I'll let you do it. Why don't you explain? People who are watching this may not know who Prop 1 is, what Prop 1 is. What is Prop 1 for people who don't know?
Well, Prop 1 was implemented to try to change the state constitution and expand on rights. The disabled, and they put like national origin and stuff like that. For me personally, the problem that I had with it, the number one was being able to take away certain parental rights away from the parents. A child having to get something as small as a booster shot or a COVID shot, all the way to being able to take puberty blockers, that should not be in the government's perspective. That's between the parents, since they are legally in charge, in charge of them. And then the other things that it gave way is to let's say, immigration. Now that you can't discriminate against their national origin, then it gives them the ability to maybe get city funding that they normally wouldn't be able to get. So that's a big thing. So now imagine, I don't know what the last number was, but let's just say it's 150 individuals that the city was taking care of at the moment may be able to get public housing. Um, you know, I can't even think about all the other things that they can get, but then I also maybe even get the right to vote in
Yeah,
city and local elections. So now the dynamics of everything is going to be changing. Um, and that's basically and once again, Prop 1 had so many things into it that it can affect that. Once again, I think that was too broad for us to implement, and I'm surprised it went through with such a high number, unfortunately.
I really there's a lot of complexity here. Once again, a more mature audience will understand your answers. Once again, so we will be talking shop after this call, but that was I really have to agree so much. A lot of the things that the Democrats do is they will make it sound good, and then what happens that this rule that actually says that is there to help you is actually weaponized against the community. And we saw that you did a good job of talking about the how the children would be subjected to. Once again, there's a certain medical industry that caused the opiate epidemic. They cannot control certain appetites that they have for money. And then whether it's giving a kid a COVID shot for $500 and the parent doesn't really get to say yes or no, right? Or doesn't get to really be involved in that decision. They take your child when they're at school and get them in a room and say, this medical procedure is something that we want to, your parents don't need to say okay to it. That's really disturbing to myself. And, there's a way for an industry to make money off of this, and that's hugely dangerous. So this has not been discussed.
I'd like to add one more thing to that part right there. The original question was regarding the migrants.
True.
Yeah. So when it comes to that situation, when I go to the community boards, and not just in the Bronx and not in my district, because as a party leader, I do go to different ones and associations and stuff like that. One of the biggest problems, and I will speak for the Bronx right now because that's where I've seen it 100%. The majority of the Bronx is 200% under the poverty level. A major reason for that is the level of illegal, undocumented individuals that are in here. So that gives certain neighborhoods in the Bronx the ability to get federal funding straight to the community. That's one thing. But when you see where this has been distributed, that's where community members have a problem. So I'll say, because of my area is predominantly Black Americans, African Americans, I see them the most vocal and being mad at the programs and the funding that's being taken away from, let's say, what they've been accustomed to for over the years, to being issued currently for the migrants that the New York City is taking over. So when I'm speaking, I'm not just speaking on my personal beliefs and stuff. I try to put the community's opinions and their vocalization on what they want changes. So for me, it's, once again, I'm a chaplain, I'm a nonprofit leader, but in the end of the day, I'm serving to the community, and that's the way I've seen myself. So
yeah,
I just wanted to highlight that point.
The not-for-profit industrial complex has certain incentives that pushes certain things. You did a great job of explaining one of those examples. So it's not as easy as people might think, and you need to actually listen to people that, like yourself, that are operating not-for-profit entities and doing things with the government that are that have better knowledge than someone who just issues sound bites. I'm so depressed about how people who just say sound bites with conviction are the ones who are raised to the top, who don't really understand these issues. So once again, props to your work. So now that we'll answer all the questions for as much as I could stick in here, now it's time for me to ask you, what do you think, as running for mayor, what do you think is the most urgent issue for New York City?
Well, there's so many things that we have right now, but
I know I'm so sorry.
And the problem is, like, if I and this is the soundbite situation, if I just said crime,
you could say a couple. I'm sorry. Yeah, or the major ones. Yeah, okay. Not just one. I get it.
For me, more is like, if you say something about crime, it's not a simple solution. Like I can say, oh, the easiest solution for crime is, hey, look, stop committing crimes. That's the simplest way. But it's not. It's a multifaceted situation. We have to, get our immigration population in hand. The individuals that we know that are doing recurrent, repeated crimes have to be given harsher punishments. We have to, have a strong NYPD that's fully funded and fully manned. I know a lot of people right there. They'll just turn on me and say, "Well, they get billions of dollars." And yes, now every organization has, I believe, needs to be more transparent and needs to be reviewed, because I don't think that everybody's, using the funds the right way. And the way you can see that is in the beginning of the year when we had to close our budget, every department across New York City had to give up like 5 to 10% of their budget. And everybody's always going to say, well, we can't manage without it or whatnot. All of a sudden, it switched over when it came to the migrant problem, that we had all the funding from each department to close the gap and pay for everything and close our budget. So crime, drugs, prostitution, corruptness, those are all things that I believe that need to be addressed at the city council and the mayor's office, all the way down to the city councils, to every elected official that we're dealing with. New York City is hard to live in right now. The funding for housing is another issue right there. If somebody said they wanted to do better, increase housing or make it more
That
affordable.
City of Yes thing is a big thing going on in the housing development stuff too, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But
What's
when somebody says let's fix on,
since we're there,
yeah. Look,
what's
if
your position on that?
if somebody said they wanted to, I'm against City of Yes, and I'm going to give one.
And they changed it. I think they changed it now to City of All or something.
I'm sure they did.
That's not the problem. That there's these problematic things, and then they just keep, right. If it gets shot down, they just give it a different name, and then they reintroduce it until they get what they want. They just keep plastering it.
So one example of City of Yes right now, that
Yeah. I'm sorry. Just if you could explain what City of Yes is for the people who don't know, and then of course why you're not for it. Go ahead.
So City of Yes is one of the proposals. I believe is at the final stages of it, and it gives zoning. One part of it is having to be able to give zoning, changing of the zones of the housing complex. So an example is, let's say in the Bronx, in a housing district, you might be able to change some of the zoning so that now you can have businesses put into those areas. You may be able to increase the let's say if you're R5 or R6 and change it to R7 or 8 or higher. Those are the zoning codes for the housing. So now you can build higher, not only higher, but in different directions and put more businesses into it. For me, one of the biggest problems is being able to take a house and convert it and put more compartments into it. So let's say if your dream, I would assume everybody's dream is to come to this country and live the American dream, have a nice white picket fence house with 2.5 kids and a job that maintain and a car, etc. Well, now you take that house and you can build a back in the backyard an extra dwelling, and then you can do the basement, and then you can expand on your house on without having to have parking regulations and other issues coming into it. So what are you fighting for anymore if you can't fight for that? If you can't fight for the American dream is being taken away. In the Bronx, I see it being one of the worst things, because once this generation's over, the next generation isn't going to want to come back here and start a regular single family living anymore. Is going to be more, how many Airbnbs you can fit into that apartment or rental spaces, instead of having a house, building for a future and a life. And that's the simplistic version of it. So I'm against City Yes. And then if you want to say, let me change the housing, besides the AMI that needs to be restructured, besides um, the developers getting too much of a tax break to build on, those are other things that we have to deal with if we just want to say, well, we need more housing. One of the reasons we need more housing is because let's say the population, if they keep on coming and we don't provide them stop at a certain point and provide them what the at a stopping point, then we're just going to keep on continuing the same problem. So
Yeah,
I honestly, I believe we have enough housing, but we don't give them up. Like for when you mentioned
yeah.
earlier with the I can't, the city voucher, the fit
City
reps, I think,
Feps.
city reps. A lot of people don't want to rent to the people coming out of the shelter system. So even though it's illegal to do that, you know,
Yeah,
so they find ways around it. So do I believe? I believe there's a lot of housing, but the people, accountability to the people, that's the problem. That's one of the main problems right there. I'm
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a rant right
No,
there.
it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I respect your answers, and once again, there's a lot of you're not really giving the sound bites that are like what people like to hear, but your answers show a depth of knowledge and understanding of the system that I really appreciate as someone who's interviewed over 100 candidates across the country, and someone who does work on the ground and is politically involved. Answers like your own may not be the smoothest as for people to hear, but it shows you a depth of knowledge and ability, and I really appreciate that. Oh, I did forget one of my allies. Oh, I'm so sorry about them. Yeah, my shout out to my people, my friends at Fulton Chelsea houses. I believe they're scheduled to have their homes become demolished. They're in the public housing system. Um, have you ever heard about the issue about what's going on over there? I could just tell you a quick recap if you want. What
Not
happens?
particularly right there, but please tell me.
Okay. So the thing is that right now there's something called wow, this is a little bit of a story. So public housing in this country, we know that was originally built for veterans, right? Stuytown, things like that was actually and then what happened was changed over to put in people who were low income, right? To try to service them, and they put them into those homes. Now what happens is that during the Obama era, there's something called Rad Pact, where the thing is that they said they could no longer pay for public housing, and that the people would actually get to own the apartments themselves because the United States was divesting completely from public housing as we know it, switching over to something called Section 8. So now what happens is that these tenants may have some, and a lot of these tenants don't know about it because my activism itself is being suppressed in this particular regard, which actually could really work for Republicans as well with their ideas of I don't know about conservatives, but as for like self ownership. The thing is that what was promised is that the people who are actually and this aligns with Obama's other housing thing, which caused a lot of problems for the minority community. The thing is that the people who are living there were supposed to have the ability to own their own apartments, right? They're divesting, so right. The first, how do they pass Rad Pact without having with saying that we're going to get rid of public housing without people going crazy? Because they said the actual poor people would actually be able to own the apartments. What happens though is that remember that there was a mortgage crisis that was caused by Obama because a lot of the mortgage lenders were once again with good intentions they came in, made all kinds of loans to low income people so they could own their own homes. So now we get to today's things finally, right? So these people have a history of living in these apartments. So now what they're doing, and they have like a particular right in this law to actually own the apartments, which they don't know about. Now what happens? They're trying to destroy the entire apartment complex, so there's no longer a history of tenancy. They're going to rebuild a new building. They're making all kinds of excuses, and we're trying to prevent the demolition of Fulton Chelsea. And that's my own personal action, which is being suppressed by so many actors in the game. I'm sorry to say. So and I do believe that we do still have to protect public housing. People say, oh, he's for Rad Pact. He's for the destruction of public housing. He's a bad guy. No, I do believe we need to save Section 9, save public housing for our most vulnerable people with disabilities, the elderly, the veterans. But I am saying that this is a unique opportunity for people in public housing to have a right and ownership in their own community, right, versus being forever victims of a bureaucracy that has been found to be the worst landlord of New York City for multiple years in a row, and also was recently indicted in the largest DOJ bust in DOJ history for bribery. that bureaucracy is trying to keep itself alive, and that bureaucracy, I'm sorry, that's my accent, needs to die. Yeah, or it really needs, maybe not die, but it needs to really be examined, which is they're running away from. That's who's paying for all that action out there that's suppressing my stuff. I'm sorry, I'm so frustrated,
No,
man. So
you go right.
that's
I
so
mean,
yeah. So we're trying to help fight the demolition of Fulton Chelsea. Would you help us in standing? Maybe you got to learn more, but would you agree to look into this topic of the
I
demolition of Fulton Chelsea?
besides the Chelsea part of it, I know everything that's going on and everything that you said, and I'll be happy to help in any way that I can, in office or out of office, and immediately. Because just to narrow it down for the people that don't understand, most of NYCHA is Section 9. What they've been trying to do, and they recently opened for in the last, since over 15 years ago, was open Section 8. Um, uh, Although it's been going on for years, they just opened it up for the masses. So now Section 8 is them trying to say, look, you can get the voucher for public housing. Just you have to find your own way to get there. Once again, there's many available housing apartments for rent, but the most landlords and brokers don't want to take the voucher because, let's say, the late payments or the issues that come with it as well. Other problems that come in with it. People's perspective of it as well, of the people that are getting it.
That's
So
right. And the late payments, you're right, is not coming from the citizen, right? It's coming from the government. So the landlord, they're going to accept Section 8, and you think everything's taken care of. Wrong. The
yeah,
landlord's not getting the payments from Section 8, and they're the government. So the landlord, what are they going to do? Sue the government? And
yeah,
then they
yeah.
don't want to take Section 8 clients and the vouchers. You're absolutely right. You understand this issue. I thank God. I
And then
appreciate
and then when it comes to the pack, they've if you go to the housing complexes, you'll see many apartments empty. And the reason why, because they don't want to rent it out, because as soon as they can get everybody out, then they have their better stand to try to knock down the building.
I was thinking exactly that. There's a huge vacancies in public housing, and just I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know that people are going to struggle to watch this whole entire interview. We've taken
Okay,
more
yeah,
than the usual time, but just so you know, out of all the communities that I work with, right, public housing has big potential, but they're the worst as in terms of actually mobilizing to help a candidate like yourself. The wrongful convictions, I've gone door to door with some of them. Disabilities, my man Marc Safman has helped introduce legislation. He's doing a lot of good things. I'm sorry to say that Fulton Chelsea, I went through 2 years in a row, like trying to get people to go out to vote on election day. And in their last election, they actually lost. Botcher won, right? Who actually openly supports the destruction of those houses, and they lost that election by the widest margin of all of contested elections in New York City races. So, as in terms of mobilizing, public housing is actually the worst, and they need to really wake up and they need to start paying it and stop being guided by these fake not-for-profits that are actually guiding them into the trash. And they get these people out here going door to door getting information, and then they collect the data and they never share these information with. They don't. I'm the only Facebook group that shares the 964 regs with public housing. The other ones, they may follow suit. They don't want to give you the information. I'm sorry to go on my personal rant, yeah, but this is true. So thank God we have an advocate like yourself who's willing to listen and work with us. And it's heartbreaking, yeah, but I want you to spend your resources where you're going to get the most benefit. Maybe Murillo, I know he's with the Conservative Party. Maybe he can help, maybe not. I don't know, right? I know he's kind of newer to the political scene. He doesn't have your level of depth and experience on this issue, but he is a public housing resident. He may be actually helpful. So that's on the east side, right? Lower east side. That's where Murillo is running for office. But on the west side, that's where Chelsea is. There's other people, a lot of Brooklyn houses. I know there's a lot of other houses that are begging for assistance, but Chelsea is actually, if we can win that fight, that will actually make national news and help the rest of the issue. So I'm not trying to. I have been helping those other places as well, but Fulton Chelsea is actually a very important fight for this whole thing. So that's just my interpretation. I will be helping the rest of y'all out as well. So that's almost towards. Hey, you know what? You did a great job. Unless you have any particular questions that you wanna or any comments you want to throw in, we're almost towards the end.
Just one thing, just one
Go
particular
ahead.
thing. So, obviously you've been following me and you reached out to me on this. But the audience didn't know. Look, I just finished the 50th congressional race. I am stepping in, and tomorrow I'll be making my formal announcement that I am running for mayor for New York City under the conservative line, the Conservative Party line of New York. And that's one of the great. I'm happy to be on the show. I'm happy to share, and I look forward to.
I'm so sorry. I got to ask this one more question. Yeah. So
Yeah, go
like
ahead.
we look at other people who are running for office, right? David Rem, right? Who got to announce it, right? We look at Curtis Sliwa, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And once again, I do respect your work, right? Being in the conservative, you're vice chair, you've run for office several times. You know what you're doing. It's not just the first time, right? It's not a vanity run. You've been involved. I really appreciate that. What do you have to say? And I'm not like saying that I'm against Curtis, right? Or saying that you're going against Curtis, but there are people who say like, he's going to take away from this line or they should unite somehow. Why are you running, and what makes you give you the confidence to say you're the guy versus Curtis or David Wren, who people might, I think those are probably your most obvious challengers, right? On within the community.
Well, yes, that's something I until Curtis actually makes it public that he is running, I don't see that as being an issue. I support his work and everything like that. I believe that me specifically, the people have seen that he already ran and didn't win, so he has his issues there. Um, we should have somebody in all
Come on,
party
man! Like
lines.
you ran for Congress and didn't win. I'm on your side, bro.
Yeah.
Like I said before, you're one of my greatest hopes. I would say honestly, maybe at this point, honestly, over Curtis Lewa as from helping my coalition. Just gonna say it like there, but you've
No,
also run races and not won. So that's come on,
no,
you got to.
and yeah, and that's what makes it very clear. When you're running at a certain level, you don't win that one. I didn't win Congress. I think my resume fits more for city council, and that's where one of my downfalls I think was city
So why
council,
not run for city council instead of
public
mayor?
advocate, stuff like that. Those three categories
Okay,
I think I fit more better in than Congress. Now, I
so
would
that
love
makes
an
sense.
opportunity to run for city council, but all in every sections that I can do, city council, public advocate, mayor, Congress, the Democratic Party has a linear percentage on that with the numbers, period. They're going to win, period, in most ways. And if somebody wants to go objectively on me that, look at our history. In the Bronx, we won no seat this year, even with Trump winning the office. So we have the team won, but the individuals didn't win. And our numbers, I believe, if he would have won New York by that 1 million margin, then our numbers and percentage would have been a lot more favorable and for us. So where it comes, the right time, right position, right person, right everything has to be in place. And I'm hopeful that I can run for mayor and win this year. Now, in this upcoming year. Now, I believe that the parties should have their own individuals. So the Democrats are going to have theirs, the Republicans are going to have yours, and I believe that this particular year, the Conservative Party should have their own voice out there. Now, yes, once again, when I said Silva didn't win, he didn't win for a lot of reasons. The public statements that he did, the way he did it, etc. Now you look at me, and I think my character, my work ethic, and the way I approach things are going to be much more different than him. So if I lose, I can live with that as well. But I'm hoping that we're ready for a change in the city. Somebody who's
I
being more
appreciate that. Yeah,
direct.
you have a
So
unique set of skills. You have a unique outlook and a unique background that is different from Curtis enough to the point where it makes sense for you to run, and different from David Rem, where it makes sense for you to run. And that's a good answer. I like that. So now that people have watched the thing, where can they find out about your campaign? Do you have a campaign website? Do you have social media that they should follow?
yes,
Shout it out.
yeah. So all my social media is at Gonzalo Duran NYC. That's GONZ. Oh, right name right there.
Oh, it's on the screen. Yeah, it's on the
Yeah,
screen.
it's under it. So, and then my website is www.gonzaloduran.nyc. I'm gonna push more to keep my website more active. Normally, I keep my social media. I've opened up basically my life so people can see the type of person that I am, not only in my personal, or assuming not my political, but also my personal and in my work as well. Because I think that's one of the things that we're missing: the transparency of the type of person that you're putting into office. Normally it's just some guy that pops up out of nowhere who just had a lot of money from the funders and the developers and stuff like that. So I think if people can just take the opportunity to get to know me and the work that I've done over the years, I think I can sway a lot more of the votes in the end of the day. And that's what I did for the congressional race. I think I got a lot of Democrats to vote on the conservative Republican line based off of just my presence there, to be honest. And I
Okay.
no.
So now that people know that your website's gonzaloduran.nyc, what's a reason for them to go there? You got some event coming up for them to look forward to? Anything?
So
What's your plans
yeah.
for the future?
So for there, well, one of the biggest things that I want to do is two events. One, um, actually, I hope that you would participate in this one. Is I haven't got the name right, but it's looking for the viable candidates. That's the name of the summit, like the viable
Okay.
candidate summits. And I'm trying to get all of the conservatives parties to come into this event. I'm talking about the Manhattan, the Bronx, the Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. If I can get them all, I'm great. That's my goal. But I want to have a conservative presence in the South Bronx, like I did last year or this year, in the beginning of the year, starting for the new year coming up for the election, so that people can see there are conservative candidates out there. The second one is going to be in December, so that not only do I make um, my biggest platform mixer, so I can try to get all my supporters in one area and one time frame, so that I can do my biggest push. Because the hardest part of running for any campaign, besides the funding, is gathering the people up for the petitioning process. And so people don't know, let's say city council, you know, depending on how high you go, it's the more signatures that you need to get on the ballot. And we're talking about anywhere from a couple of thousands to tens to hundreds of thousands. So that's something that I'm prepping for and I'm getting ready for.
Yeah. Just so you know, besides also the petitioning, which my team is also planning on helping candidates with, right? Or I'm definitely helping. I'm going to be probably one of the hardest workers out there. Also, um, basically, just want to make one thing is the mayor's race. Great example of the manipulation of people that mean well. The publicly funded elections for mayor, right? In order for you to qualify, I think that right, the minimum I think is like $250,000. Then what happens is that you have Andrew Yang coming in from out of town. He doesn't know a damn thing. I hate that guy so much. $2 million gets donated, and then he sucks 8 million, like $16 million out from the city, or some obscene amount, right? And the thing is that unfortunately, the publicly funded elections is weaponized against candidates like Gonzalo Duran, unless he has rich friends, which I don't know that he does. I've been watching this guy. I haven't seen him hanging out with the super rich friends.
No, no, no. I'm
So,
not.
as in terms of shadow donators, like slipping him $250,000 so he can qualify for matching funds, it's very difficult for a New York City mayor race to qualify.
Well, even
And
for my congressional race, Richard Torres had $9 million. The independent had about $120 million to the LaRoche campaign, and I had less than 5,000.
the
And
Lucians had 120 million.
no, 120,000
Oh, 120,000. Yeah, I was
for the
like, holy
independent,
shit.
which is a high number for an
But it's
independent.
not 9 million, right?
No,
Yeah.
no, no, but it's not 9 million. So you can see that the
And how much was yours again?
less than 5,000. Look, I'll be honest. I'll tell you right now. I did it with $500, and I got 34,000 votes.
That's cool, man. But exactly, it's a real challenge, right? And once again, my own activism is really impeded by the fact that the people out there that are going to do what the industry wants are the ones who get all the money. And it makes sense, but it's really up to our community and our coalition. So
Oh, just to be
back to
clear,
you.
the reason why the funds were lower of me is because I dedicated my campaign funds to the party. So I should throw that out there. Um, I wanted this year for a presence in the Conservative Party. In the prior years for the Bronx, they had maybe a handful of candidates. This year we had 18 out of the 21 run, and we lost two for silly petitioning. We lost it by one or two signatures, and one didn't go further because of family issues. So this particular year, I want the slate full: mayor, public advocate, city councils, borough president. I want them all filled with conservatives. Even the judges that are coming out, we need to fill. If an elected official runs unopposed, an incumbent runs unopposed, they walk into a position. $140,000 plus dollars these people are getting, and then the power to sway our rights. I can't imagine that people are just letting it happen, and it bugs me. So, you know,
the industry, it's horrible. Yeah, like, but I get it, right? So much money out there that people can make by having relationships with the government, and then they slip candidates money, and then there's a big problem. So, I'm glad, right? If you sold out and you made backdoor deals, you've been around. I'm sure you could knock doors. You could knock on, say, you know, I can do this too. Can you do that? Can you give me some money? And I'm sure there's certain conversations to have, and props to you on not having those conversations. You've been around for a long time. You have your own TV thing. Hey, it's cool, man. You're a significant force in the game. So I really respect it. I'm so excited to finally talk with you. I know you've been super busy, but definitely you've been someone I've been trying to reach out to for a while. So that's the interview. Thanks for checking it out. We're going to try to interview all the candidates running the New York City cycle. And once again, this is actually one of my greatest hopes as in terms of working with my coalition. So thank you so much. And thanks for coming on. All right.
for having me. Thank you.
All right. I just hit end stream. Well, hopefully we'll stay on so we can have our own talk.